Hello, hello. It is December 7th, 2024, and it's Sunday, so we didn't have a chess club meet at Brooklyn Game Night or anything, but me and Anthony met up to play some practice games in the time control of 25 minutes, delay 5, because we're playing in a USCF rated tournament tomorrow with that time control. This is the beginning of where I'm going to get a rapid rating at the very least. So this will be my first rapid rated USCF tournament. I think they call it regular on the USCF webpage. But yeah, we basically simulated playing the games. This isn't the first time we've done it. The previous time we did this was sometime in November. Actually, I have the score sheets right here. Wait a second. Yeah, at the start of November, because I was planning on going to some other event on a Sunday, but then I think it was like I think the night before I had some family matters to attend to, so I couldn't rest very well, so I just decided not to go. But I do have score sheets for the games we played today, and last time, but here they are. And I mean, you can tell these are just like, just come from a notepad. I literally used a Sharpie to write my notes. So this is a spoiler for the game if you're gonna look at it. I also wrote some stuff in like blue because it turns out I wrote the wrong move down. Yeah, so I just wanted to go through them here. We did analyze each game after we played them, at least in like certain key positions. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, let's go into it. I've blabbered for 2 minutes now. So moving on to the first game, I have the black pieces. And we're playing Anthony. It's just me and him, just 2 games. So we'll see how it goes. So we get into a Caro-Kann, and he played c3, and I was like, whoa. That's interesting. I don't think it's bad. It prepares d4 technically, right? He told me after the game he, for some reason, thought I played c5, a Sicilian, and was going to go into an Alpin. But that's not what's on the board. I played c6. I kind of just ignored it, and I played d5, going with the usual Caro-Kann stuff. He plays e5 right away, so I was like, all right, I'm not going to try to, punish white for playing c3 immediately, like on move 2. I don't think you even can, realistically speaking. So I was like, all right, we'll just transpose into a normal short variation Caro-Kann, as we've played like a dozen times by now. Everything will be fine. So bishop f5, and there's d4. So we basically transpose into a advanced Caro-Kann, except he's played c3 already. I play e6, he plays knight f3, so now we kind of transpose into a short variation of the Caro-Kann, except he has a pawn on c3. Yeah. So I played knight d7. Usually I would play c5, knight c6. But this time around I decided to play knight d7. I know this is like a playable line. It's a little more passive, but whenever I do push c5, if I need to move my knight to e7, it won't obstruct the protection, so I won't drop the pawn temporarily. It's a little passive, but it's, more than playable. Bishop e2. Now I play c5. He plays knight bd2, which, it doesn't exactly defend the pawn here, but I haven't played knight c6, so I don't actually have a second attacker on the d4 pawn. So, and you already have it defended twice anyway, so not a big deal. Pretty normal stuff. His bishop is a little stuck back here, but I'm sure with due time that bishop will find a home or find some life. Maybe that's foreshadowing. Queen b6, kind of slowly adding pressure to the pawn on d4, and now there's more of a justification for him to not move this bishop, which it's already not moving, but it also pressures b2. Very normal French and Caro-Kann idea. Queen b6 to pressure d4 and pressure b2. So castles, I played knight e7, just slowly trying to develop. I actually could have played knight h6 here, this knight, if it goes to b3, I mean, sure. Although maybe I would have started with bishop f4, knight h6, so that it has a f5 square instead of just being immediately attacked after knight b3, but whatever. Knight e7, b3. So when he played b3, I was like, you're really trying to fianchetto your bishop to this diagonal here? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's because this is under attack, so in the future you can just move your bishop to like here or there, and now this pawn's not hanging. So I was like, all right, fair enough. I played bishop g4. Not the best move, but I wanted to just trade this off to get rid of the d4 pawn, but moreover to allow knight f5 to happen. He plays h3, so I trade on f3. Small detail is that I'm not actually trading this knight for this bishop. I'm actually trading this knight for this bishop, which is not as good technically, but it's not wrong, right? So if you look at this position, or sorry, h3. So if you look at this position and then this position, you can see that I'm actually trading this bishop for this knight, which in some openings is actually kind of like a neat little thing to realize. You're not, in these kinds of positions where the knight replaces itself, you're not actually trading the knight that's on the square where the capture happens. Whether or not that's useful in your games, who knows, but it's a small detail to remember, and I don't know, maybe it will matter in some variation in some line that you may play. So knight f5, which was the whole idea. I was actually really concerned about g4 here. So if g4, I probably would have played knight e7 back. Knight h6 is a move, but then also just takes, and like I didn't really want that. I could also castle queenside, play bishop e7, rook g8. But I didn't really see a reason to allow this damaging of my pawn structure for no reason. So if he played g4, I would have just played knight e7 and probably long castle king b1 to get out of this file that might open, and life will be okay. Bishop e7 though, just trying to castle this way. He plays queen d2, which I didn't really understand the purpose of this move. Like, you're not going here because I'm covering it. I didn't think going here did anything, and neither did going to here, e3. So I didn't really know what he was trying to do with queen d2. I played a3 just as a waiting move because I didn't really know what he was intending with queen d2. So I just wanted to make sure that nothing bad would happen. Also, it delays my castling by one move, which sounds bad, but what I wanted was to see if he's gonna play g4 or not. Right, if he plays g4, I have to play knight h6. But if he plays g4, then I will castle long, and if takes, so I'll just show you here g4 here. If takes, I mean, this is a fine position. Well, computer says no, it's not. C4, but I was probably just gonna like castle and just run my king this way and try to play it from there. Obviously, positionally, the computer says this is god awful, but that was my plan. Okay, so he played bishop d3, so no g4, so I was happy to castle short. But he does take my knight on f5, and this I was okay with to some extent, because after what I played in the game, f5, one of the ideas I have in this position is to play g6, move my rook out of the way, and play bishop f8, bishop g7, and just like fianchetto the bishop very slowly. He can't really push e6 yet because, well, first of all, my pawn will take, and second of all, I can always blockade it with queen e6 or maybe like rook e8, rook e6, and I'm gonna move my rook out of the way if I do play this g6 move anyway. So yeah, queen f4 is attacking my f pawn, so I defend it with queen e6. I'm not scared of knight g5. Wow, knight g5, because I'll just trade it off and then play something like g6. And yeah, my king side's a little weak, but you know, it's only his queen that's really attacking my king. He would have to figure out how to activate his bishop behind all these pawns, which maybe you go like here, 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 but that's going to take a while. King h2, a weird move. I didn't really understand the point of King h2. He told me after the game that he wanted to play Rook g1, g4, g5, but we'll see how that goes. Here I played f6, so I realized that this pawn is going to be really annoying, so I wanted to break apart the structure in some way and not have to deal with the pass pawn, is really what I thought. And I was looking at captures. You can't take this way because I have bishop d6, skewering the queen to the king. You would probably have to play like knight d6. Knight d6, 95, Jesus. But then, you know, I can take back with a knight, I can take back with a bishop, or probably the knight. And I'll just win a pawn. This pawn, you can go to g7, but it's fine. Everything's fine. So rook a e1 is what he played, which makes sense. Right now he's starting this capture with a tempo, so I'd have to move my queen, but I wasn't too afraid of that. I just played rook fe8. He played rook d2, and now I took on e5. I figured he's going to have to take this with something. I am up a pawn, so that's a good thing, so he probably should take back. And if for whatever reason he doesn't, I have e4, and now I just have like a really big pawn center. So yeah, he's got to take back. I was really expecting knight takes, pawn takes, and then reestablish his passed pawn. So knight takes, but then he played rook takes, and I was like, huh, how interesting. Apparently, well, not apparently, clearly, I missed a better response than what I played in the game. What I played was queen f7, just defending these two. For some reason, I calculated this is not being as good because take g3, and then, I don't know. Here, I guess I miscalculated. I can just take the rook. But yeah, for some reason, I thought this wasn't good for me, so I played queen f7 to defend both pawns. And then he takes my f-pawn. So now I'm down a pawn, which is obviously not good, but it's like, it's still a game. It's still playable. Granted, my pawns here are very loose and are about to be captured, so maybe it's not that good, but as long as it can keep causing problems, being down a pawn is not the worst thing in the world. You just need some compensation for it. And I've played gambits many a time. Like when I started learning chess, I learned a lot of gambits. Not like garbage gambits like the Jerome or something. Like I would play like the Scotch gambit, the Leonhard gambit, and the Scandi, which is actually not that great, but it's like playable. The Papaticulat gambit against the French. But anyway, so like I'm more than fine with playing down a pawn and just trying to find active play. So I started with queen e6, continuing to defend the d5 pawn here. He played g3. I didn't really see a reason for him to play g3. I guess it stops all the skewer ideas, but it feels a little slow. I figured you might want to bring your king to g1 instead. But at the same time, I don't know why he played king h2 to begin with, so yeah. Bishop f6, just stopping any ideas of like going down here. And then g4, and now I was like, that's so strange because he played g3 and then he played g4. I guess g3, he played it because he wanted to stop bishop d6 ideas. But now that I've moved my bishop to f6, now he's fine with playing g4. I guess that's what his thinking was. I don't remember exactly what he said about that. So, sure. I continue with queen e2. Technically is forking the rook and the bishop, but the main response, rook b1, kind of holds everything together. Computer says he could have played g5, which would have been really interesting. But it's also -1, so not as good as rook b1. So rook b1, queen c2, again forking more so attacking the rook so that I can take his bishop if it moves. But he played queen c1, which I saw. I saw this whole variation here after g4. I was looking at queen e2 for a while, so I calculated queen e2, and I thought queen c1 was actually better because it holds everything. I just couldn't remember why it because we looked at this line too, queen c1 immediately. I couldn't remember why we discarded this. Computer says c takes d4. cd4, cd4, rook a c8. Which I guess is a little uncomfortable, but I didn't think it would be a -2 position. I guess my pieces do look pretty active in that spot, so maybe it's all right. But yeah, I saw queen e2, rook b1, queen c2, queen c1, rook e2, protecting my queen, and again, like getting active play. I'm still down that pawn, but I have pieces on his second rank, and I'm being a nuisance. You can see his bishop had to retreat, his rook, which admittedly was only staring at his f-pawn, can't actually occupy the open file because it needed to protect the bishop that was on b2 earlier. But I saw the queen trade, the queen trade happen. This is still fine because the rook is tied down to the bishop. He played king g2, and here I was trying to decide where I wanted to put my rook. Did I want it on d8 or do I want it on e8? And on the one hand, if I play rook e8, I thought he was going to take here or take here. And then after something like rook e2, I wasn't sure I really had the counterplay that I was looking for. So what I did was, okay, let me at least get rid of one of my hanging pawns by trading on d4. I'm going to defend my pawn just because I don't want to go down 2 pawns. I didn't see enough compensation after something like rook e8, rook takes d5, rook e2, or rook e2. And, I didn't see anything here because I thought rook f5. Oh, his bishop's hanging. Okay. Yeah, I was only looking here. I should have seen this is hanging. So, okay, so maybe I should have done it. But I played rook d8, just holding the pawn down. He plays g5. I play bishop e7. Rook e5. He told me that he thought my bishop was getting trapped because I think he saw, if I played this, I just pinned myself. I don't have any like discovered attacks or anything. And if I played here, 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 and we arrived to the same problem. But no, not true. I have king f7 to defend everything. If he plays g6, I take with the h-pawn, so you can't really kick my king away. He could go here, but then I just go back, and we're kind of just at like where we were before, so I was fine with that. a3, I didn't see what the plan was around a3, so I kept trying to play for activity. I played rook d6. I was actually considering playing rook g6 to take here, trade, get this bishop out, and then go from there. I would have pressure on this pawn because this rook is tied down. I was going to play rook d2, so that might have been okay in the end, but he played bishop a1 just so that he doesn't have to tie his rook to the b file. He can like go this way now. I played rook d2, attacking this pawn. Rook b e1 is now threatening my bishop, so I have to defend it with rook d7. I also probably could have played like this, but I figured check here, check is pretty bad. Oh, I guess you can't go here because it's covered, but yeah, I guess rook e8 then. So I played rook d7 just to protect. It also subtly defends the b7 pawn, which I don't know if he's ever going to be able to get there, but everything in my position is relatively held. Maybe not the h7 pawn, that's fine. b4, g6, stopping his pawns from promoting. I totally forgot about his f-pawn, but it is pinned by my rook, so you can't really do much with it yet. King f3, bringing his king closer, which not a bad move. Rook a2, I was asking him who's defending this pawn. The answer is no one. I guess he could have played rook e3, but he played h4, so not the best move. I'd take the pawn. I should also note here, around this time, he's around like a minute on the clock, and I have a minute and a half. I was actually down like 3 or 4 minutes in both games. Actually, in the second game, even more time. But I took a lot of time in this middle game just to make sure I'm not missing anything, just to try to calculate all the things that I thought he would play. And it kind of paid off because I have a winning position now. But even through all of this, even though I'm down a pawn, it's still relatively equal. I have active play, so yeah. Rook a2. I think rook e3 probably would have worked, but okay, maybe not. H4. I take on a3 with check. Plays king g4, and here I was starting to, I wouldn't say be worried, but I was starting to acknowledge the fact that his king is much more active than mine. You know, if he can somehow find a way to break through with the king and the pawns here, then that would be the next challenge of this game. But in the meantime, I'm going to take the second pawn that's free, right? And I mean, rook e7 is still not an idea because take, just like the app. Not an ad, by the way. He plays rook b8. I defend it with a5, and now this bishop is just like cemented on this square. It's going to be hard for him to double up his rooks again. He'd have to go this way, which I guess is not that hard, but you know. I guess he can't really move his rook off the back rank because his bishop needs to be protected too, so there's that. H5. Here I offer a bishop trade, which apparently I should not have done. But I figured my position is already like winning if we trade bishops because I'll have the two passed pawns. Clearly I'm wrong, but such is life. So he takes the bishop, I take back. He takes the pawn, I take this pawn. And after rook b6, oh yeah, so I played rook c6 just to defend everything. You can't go rook a6 obviously, so he goes back. b6 just to defend the pawn. F4, he's trying to break through with the GNF pawns, but thankfully my king is here and his rook can't actually go to f5 to harass my king, so I was like, all right, that's fine. Now I'm pushing my pawn, f5, rook d6, takes on g6, I take back, and we played a bunch more moves, but eventually he did resign because I had two passed pawns, and they're getting pushed. The crazy thing is the computer at this very position is saying this is a draw or this is zeros. And that's kind of baffling to me, if I'm going to be completely honest. Because I don't know where this is a draw. He ended up playing here, and I'm trying to remember the rest of the game. I think I played something like... No, I didn't play this. I think I played a3 check here. I think he went back, and then I started pushing this pawn when he went this way. I defended it. And again, I don't remember all the moves at this point because we were getting low on time. But visually, it looked like I was in the driver's seat because I have two passed pawns. Apparently, this is still holdable, which is pretty crazy. Like, I didn't think this was basically a draw, right? Like, am I not just promoting my pawns? Maybe there's a way to defend this, but I'll let the computers handle that. Nevertheless, he did resign, so I get the win here. And it was a pretty good game overall. The opening was definitely a little weird because of c3, but we transposed into a short variation, kind of. I guess a pawn is not really on c3 in the short, but yeah, he was definitely better in the opening, which I couldn't even explain why. I guess it's just this e takes f5 idea was probably the big issue. So a little unfortunate, but you know, thankfully I managed to get active play after the exchanges and managed to pick up a few free pawns to what I thought was win the endgame, but apparently I'm not winning this endgame. If I was playing against a computer, of course. All right, moving on to the second game that we played. We switched colors. We've analyzed the previous game, so now we're moving on to game 2. And here, with the white pieces, I'm not going to play my the openings that I played in that month of November where I was just going to play new stuff. So I played e4, e6, d4, d5. I know he plays a French. I took actually a decent pause here on move 3, maybe like a minute, because I didn't know what I wanted to play against him. Of course, the advanced is fundamentally sound. I've played... What have I played against him? I've played the Tarash against him a good amount. I've played the Schlechter against him once, actually, only once. I could try to surprise him with knight c3, but I don't know anything about this. I could play something dumb and stupid like the Perseus Gambit, which is knight f3. Knight f3, e takes 95. I decided to play bishop d3, the Schlechter, just because it was fresh in my mind. I was looking at it very briefly before I went out to meet up with him. And in the Tarash, I mean, the Tarash is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I know the line that he plays. And the last time I played the Tarash against him, I think I did win off of winning an exchange by trapping his rook and pushing my queenside pawns. But yeah, I just wanted to play something that maybe he's a little less experienced against, being this. And again, we played it once. We went into this d takes e4 line, knight bishop e4. He plays knight e7 here, knight d7, and thankfully I was looking at this right before I left to meet up with him, and I looked at what the best moves were, and I noticed one particular move, and it caught my eye, and it's technically the best move, but the second and third move are within 0.07 of each other, so clearly there's many ways to play here. G3. And the whole idea is that normally what's considered theory is knight f6 immediately to force bishop f3 so that you stay on this diagonal. But because you've played knight d7, I can eke out... I have one extra move before my bishop gets kicked away. So I can play g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and now you can't really trade off my bishop with your knight. Or you can't at least like make me move my bishop again. And my bishop is like slightly safer compared to if you've played knight f6 immediately. So we get here. He plays bishop d6, pretty logical. I played knight e2. I was still thinking in terms of the Schlechter variation, where your your knight does go to e2. Again, in the main theoretical line, you get this position, and then c5 is the way to go, but let's just say like bishop d6. I was thinking I would have to play knight e2 anyway and just castle. But here in the game, I totally have the option of playing knight f3. I didn't want to play knight f3 because I wanted to keep this diagonal open, and I know Anthony's playstyle, so I knew he was going to want to play b6, bishop b7. Obviously, you can't play it right away because I would take the rook. But I figured, okay, you're going to want to play that probably, so let me put my knight on e2 instead. So yeah, sorry, bishop d6, knight e2. It's not the theoretical best move, but I think it works better against him specifically, which is why I played it. So castles, castles. And it was at this position here, well, this position I realized he was going to play b6. But it was in this position here where I was like, you know, if I did play knight f3, I can totally play c4 and pretend I'm playing a Catalan without an e-pawn. And I thought to myself, that's pretty funny. I could have tried playing like that. Is it a good plan? I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I thought. It would be funny. Rook b8 is played. He's preparing b6, bishop b7. I played c4. And here, I took a long think before I played c4 because I thought I had some crazy idea of playing c4, b6, here, 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 and then your knight is trapped. This is what I thought in my head, but then I realized, wait, you can take the bishop. Or sorry, you can take the pawn. So I was like, okay, let me play, after b6, queen c2. And now he plays bishop e7. Now I was like, okay, now I can go boom, bam, boom, bam. But then I was like, oh, wait. No, I can't. You have a knight protecting this. So I felt really stupid because I had spent like 3 or 4 minutes calculating all this stuff, and then I failed to realize there's a knight on d7. So that was kind of stupid of me. So queen c2, really not a necessary move. I should have just played knight c3, knight bc3. Maybe something like bishop e3 or bishop, maybe not. Maybe bishop f4 even. But yeah, queen c2 was not a good move. But it doesn't hurt my position, so it was fine by me. He plays bishop b7. I played bishop e3. Again, I'm trying to prepare c5 because reasons. He trades off my bishop, which, you know, it was my strong bishop, but it was also his strong bishop. So it's basically an even trade. It's like, yeah, there's light squared weaknesses, but like, what do you have to pressure the light squares? Like your queen? I mean, sure, I'll just bring my queen over and it's totally fine. So I thought this was fine. He plays c5 and tries to break open the center, but I played rook d1. I didn't need to take, right? Because then he's going to put something on c5, which I could kick out with b4, but, you know, I didn't want to let him put a piece on c4. I was like, no, you got to work for it. Queen c7. I didn't really know what he was aiming for with queen c7 because there's nothing to, like, capture here. But I guess you're connecting a rook, so I guess it can't be that bad. b3, rook fd1, knight bc3, and now he finally takes on d4. I take back with the bishop. I was also considering taking back with the knight and threatening queen b5 to try to attack the bishop and force his queen somewhere, but queen b7 comes with checks, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. So I played bishop takes. He plays bishop c5. Again, I don't really want to take and then have him put his knight there, so I was like, all right, you take me. I played rook d2 just to begin doubling up my rooks, just because, like I said, I'm not going to take. I mean, now I'll take. And after knight e5, I played rook ad1. He plays rook takes d4, and I played rook takes d4. A natural looking move, but this is a blunder. So I saw queen b6, or sorry, queen b7 and or queen c6 check. And we were looking at this, and I was like, oh, this doesn't look that fantastic, right? We both talked about this after the game. And we're like, what's so bad about this? Queen b7, king g1. Or sorry, I saw king g1 check. Now it's a fork. So I was like, okay, I'll just play king f1, and it's fine. And this is where we both stopped calculating. And when we looked at this position with the computer, we saw like the graph of like the evaluation. We're like, wait, what is that big spike down there? And it's this position. We had both missed queen h1 in this variation. Knight g1 is forced. Knight f3 is coming. My rook's under attack. My knight is under attack. Can't save both. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Now, the alternative to both of these moves is king h3, but this is also really bad. F3 attacks the rook. If this actually did happen to me, I would have played rook d3, but this is mate in 10. Better moves is... Oh, not even there? Queen d1. Queen d1 is better, apparently. But yeah, we decided to look at this and wanted to see like if we could find the whole sequence. And I'll just show it to you for fun. Knight g4, or sorry, knight g5. King h4 is forced. Queen g2, I saw this move. Queen g2, sack the knight. h6 check. King f4 is the most resilient way to play. Take on f2. Block with the rook. E5. King f5 or king takes e5. Both of which deflect the king defending the rook. But you don't even take the rook. You play queen c5. Knight d5 is the most resilient move because king f4 is mate with g5 check. Mate. Which is absurd. boom, bam. This is mate. That's cut off. That's cut off. That's cut off. That's cut off. Like, wow. But anyway, continuing on to the mate in 10. Queen c5. Knight d5 is most resilient. Rook e8 check. King f5 or king f4. Slightly different moves, but it's another check. And queen d6 is mate. So, crazy line that both of us missed. He just played rook a d8, or rook d8. And, okay, so here, I had like a 5-minute think, or a 6-minute think, where I'm just like, is this really just going to be a draw? Are we just like liquidating everything and just going into an endgame that's probably a draw because it's knight versus knight? The pawns are basically symmetrical. Granted, he has a 4-on-3, I have a 3-on-2, and maybe it's not so clear, but this just looks really like a game that we both would lose rather than win. And I was like, is there really nothing better? And I was looking around. I was trying to see if I wanted to play something else, but nothing really looked better than just taking. So I'll show you what I calculated. And I predicted all of the moves, and I was right on all of the moves. And by right, I mean this is what actually happened in the game. So I looked at rook takes d8. So rook takes d8, queen takes d8. Knight e4, trying to trade off a pair of knights. Queen e8 pins my knight. f3 protects it. If he takes, then I will take with either the pawn or the queen. I wanted to take with the queen to make the endgame a little simpler. He does take. I take back. And now we have this endgame. Who's better? No one. He basically has like a 4-on-3 on this side. I have a 3-on-2 on this side. Who's going to mess up? Right, so a5. A5 doesn't actually like lock the structure up. I can play a3, b4. Not yet because of knight takes c4. But maybe in due time. And I was still taking a lot of time here just to make sure I don't blunder. So I played h3 first to prevent any knight g4 ideas. h5. I'm sliding my king over to the center. So king f2, g5, king e3, king g7, knight d4. And the idea of knight d4 was that it stops any knight f3 shenanigans, right? Like any checks here, because I was planning on going this way to try to push here. But knight d4 would kind of make things a little annoying. So I played knight d4. Also, it stops any f-pawn moves. You either have to get in front of it and then get behind it and then push f4, which is a little slow, or just don't move it. So he played king g6, king d2, g4. So here I took a really long think, and now that I'm looking at the evaluation, the two moves that I'm considering here, which I think all of anyone who's watching right now is also considering, do you take or do you push? And I wasn't really sure. What I played in the game was h4. And I saw something in this line that I didn't like, but I thought was fine. And I'll get to that later, because that's what I played in the game. I looked at taking on g4. He takes back. I would play something, and then he would be able to come to g5. I think what I saw was here. What did I see here? Oh, I saw that he could take with the knight, and I thought this was not so clear because he can actually come in, or after he moves his knight, he can start coming in and try to win this pawn, and I'd have to come back or like put my knight on e2, which I didn't want to put my knight on e2 because I wanted to control the e6 pawn and indirectly the f pawn. So it's like, oh, I don't like that. Computer says it's still zeros, but I didn't like it, so I went with h4. And he plays f5 and blunders the e pawn, right? Remember, I was saying before, you can't push the f pawn because I'm going to take the e6 pawn, so that's what I did. He plays knight f3 check now that my knight has left, but I can just play king e3. And I'm going to pause here and go back to this position. What did I see previously? Right, you might be wondering, what did you see previously? I saw here, and so I saw this, right? And this is totally fine for me. It's even winning. But I also saw, if for some reason, let's just say I don't want to take, maybe you have an idea of sacking your knight, and now you're pushing this pawn. But then I realized, like, oh wait, no, you can't even go there, but that's fine. So I thought he had ideas of sacking on h4 and pushing down the g pawn. So when we got to this position, he took on e4 first. I tick back, and then he did sack the knight. I was like, you son of a bitch. The literal words that went through my head when he played this move was, you son of a bitch. Because I had calculated it, and I knew what was going to happen. I didn't like it, and I thought it wasn't so clear, but apparently it is very clear now that I see the position on the board. Oops. Now that I see the position on the board, I'm like, oh wait, this is fine, right? And the reason being, I just take back, and it's like, yeah, you can try to push, but now your king is blocked out, and his response, king f6, doesn't work because I can just retreat my knight back to f5, and now I'm gonna stop this pawn. This pawn can't move, obviously, and my knight is cutting your king off from coming in. So you can see I just am totally controlling the king there, and it's all good. So he tries to make a run for it with g3. I totally could have played this. It would have been a little messy, but I totally could have played it. But the move that really just solidifies the game, which I found, and I was just double checking, was the very simple knight takes f5 check, forking the king and the pawn. You do not have a passed pawn anymore. And here Anthony resigned because, let's just say here, take, and I'm up a knight, I have a passed pawn, I have an extra pawn here. It's too many threats. Two threats to be specific, which is too many. And I won this game because of an unsound sacrifice. Technically, the win was actually, or the main blunder was actually pushing the f pawn because I have this. But yeah, it looked like a drawish endgame, but he messed up, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, it was more about who's losing the game and not about who's winning the game. So overall, these were the games that we played. If Anthony watches this video for whatever reason and wants to somehow get a sneak peek into what I'm going to play against him, if I'm playing against him with a white, I'm going into another French, I'm going to play the Throsh the next time, which is tomorrow, so I don't think he'll be able to see it. And as black, I'm just going to play the Caro-Kann again. So best of luck. Hope you enjoyed those analyses, and I'll catch you maybe Tuesday or even tomorrow. We'll see. Who knows? I don't.